Today on Light of the Word with Pastor Ray.
God comes and He gives us a word in Ephesians chapter 1, verse 13 and 14. Don't get yourself wrapped up in all the doctrine and theology that people lose the point that God's saying, I'm sealing you. Some people want to go, is it once saved, always? Look, don't miss what He's saying. I'm sealing you. I'm putting my ownership on you. This is my possession. I'm saying to all the world, I'm saying to the devil, no matter what the tribulation, no matter what's going on, that one's mine. Don't open that box and don't mess with my possession.
Open your heart to us, Lord, so we can know your word. We come before you, Jesus. Speak to our hearts as we discover your love for us. How wide, how deep, how far. Pour into us so we can learn to follow. One surrender at a time. You have made the way for us to know you, a path that's straight and right. By the light of the word.
Babies, as I'm sure you know, are not that strong. That is, until they get their hands on something that they're not supposed to have, then they suddenly become Superman, and their little hands turn into the tightest vices known to man. While this is a poor comparison, God is similar in that He refuses to let go of us, His people, no matter what. You're held tightly in the safest hands you could ever know. Today, Pastor Ray unpacks this idea of how God holds tightly to His people through everything. Well, let's join Pastor Ray in the book of Revelation chapter 7 for today's edition of Light of the Word.
Beautiful study through all the Bible when we read even history of the seal. Just by chance, someone said, I want to share this with you. And it just happens to be on the cover of this magazine, which you probably can't see, but it's a seal. And how the seal was used in the day, so different from ours, but a owner would send his servant to go buy for me, my business. And so that servant, and you see so many pictures of us as the servant of Christ and the Holy Spirit are beautiful. I'll try not to digress on those things, but the way it was practically was go and do business for me. And they would go, and let's say it was the next port over, and go, oh, you have the fine purple and you have this special pottery that we don't have in our region. I'm going to buy it and then I'm going to sell it. And so he sends his servant with a fistful of gold coin or whatever it may be, go in and buy these things. So he would go in and say, I want 10 of these, 50 of these, and 200 of that. Now put them in a box, a crate, put them all in there, wrap it with twine, and then I'm going to take a big old thing of wax. And where I tie the twine, I'm going to put that wax on that twine. And then he was given the signet ring of his master. And if you could see this, this is one of a kind. It would not be replicated in any other way. The owner of this seal, especially a well-known businessman, everybody knew that's Bob Johnson's sign, seal. That's his and his only. And by putting the seal on the box, it did two things. Don't nobody go into the box. And if I get this when it arrives on this ship, then I know I'm holding the ship responsible for breaking the seal. Somebody on the ship went into my box and took what was in it. But the other part of it was the servant didn't ride with the ship. He would make his way back and he would wait for the ship to come in. Then when they unloaded the ship, they'd put it down and he would come up and he'd go, yep, that's my box. See, my seal, that's my seal, that's my box. This is my master. He owns everything in this box. And then he would take the box to his master. It was a sign of ownership. And this is the beautiful thing God does for these 144,000. Through all the tribulation, there's a seal. Don't touch it. Don't open it. Don't mess with it. That's mine. It's my property. And for us today, God comes and he gives us a word in Ephesians chapter 1, verse 13 and 14. Don't get yourself wrapped up in all the doctrine and theology that people lose the point that God's saying, I'm sealing you. Some people want to go, is it once saved, always? Look, don't miss what he's saying. I'm sealing you. I'm putting my ownership on you. This is my possession, and I'm saying to all the world, I'm saying to the devil, no matter what the tribulation, no matter what's going on, that one's mine. Don't open that box and don't mess with my possession. Ephesians chapter 1, verse 13 and 14. In him you also trusted, after you heard the word of truth, the gospel of your salvation, in whom also, having believed, you were sealed with the Holy Spirit of promise, who is the guarantee of our inheritance until the redemption of the purchased possession, to the praise of his glory. The seal said this: when that servant would receive the box on the other port, the seal also said this: paid in full. I owe you nothing because I've already paid for it on the other side. And I just see a beautiful thing when we make heaven sure, if you would, there's going to be a seal upon all of us, paid in full. There's nothing required. It's all been paid on the other side of the shore. And now on heaven's shore, we get to just, if you would, unbox and be received into the master who bought us. That's a whole study in itself, but for context, to stay in it, verse 4, and I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of who? Israel were sealed. Who? Israel. God is putting this special seal on the nation, on these 12 tribes. And part of my teaching, in Revelation especially, all of it is, let's put ourselves into the situation and just imagine what it was like, whether it's Jesus, Palm Sunday, whether it's Abraham, like, wait, what? Or here, and what, no win. But the other part that's huge to me is dispelling myths. One of the greatest myths is that these are 144,000 super evangelists, 144,000 Billy Grahams. Where does it say that? Nowhere. It does not say that. I just dispel the fact it doesn't say that. But here's the part that I can get on board with. Of course, they're going to be telling the world, man, this is who God is. And in the midst of all these things that are happening, I can tell you that God will still touch you and God will still receive you, regardless of what decisions you made on the other side of what we call this rapture, where he takes his church away. I'm going to talk about that before we close. And there's a place for all of us when you know that God has sealed you and when you know that no one can touch you, except the Lord allows it. There is nothing that will keep you from going, you know what? It doesn't matter what I think you may think. It doesn't matter how you may respond. I know who holds me. I know whose hand is upon me. And I think there's just this default. There's 144,000. They will share the gospel because they have received the gospel of grace. And I think the beauty of it for me is it dispels one of the greatest myths of our day. I don't know if it's the world, the flesh, or the devil, probably all three, that there are those who have the special gift of evangelism. The Billy Grahams. They do the evangelism, and I just kind of watch. These are 144,000. Nowhere are they called super evangelists, but they will be this witness for Christ, that the world, it will be undeniable. And I believe there's that picture of us. And their picture is, God has touched me. My testimony is that God has put his seal upon me, and God has called me his own. He's put in his ownership. And you want the greatest witness in evangelism that you can tell? Just tell somebody your story. And let them decide. If God did it for them, surely he can do it for me. If God can save a wretch like that, or if God can take a mess and turn it into, I like to tell people, can I share you my rags to riches story? And they think I'm going to tell them a story where I was poor and I was poor and I was homeless and I lived in rags, and then God stepped into my life and he gave me this and gave me that, and now I have this, wonderful life. No, I go, my rags to riches story is that God saved me from, I was educated, I was working in the Space Center. I was working at the pinnacle of aerospace. I was launching rockets. I was the last person to touch the rocket before it lifted off. I was the next to last person to leave the launch pad. I had all these things, and you would think it was rich, and I'd go home and I'd look into the mirror and I would look into the depths of emptiness and go. So I live on the beach, have one of the greatest jobs in the world, education to figure out how to do all these things, and yet I sit here in emptiness. I was truly living in rags because I was a pauper and in poverty spiritually. And then one day, just by God's grace, by absolutely no rhyme or reason to it, God started prompting my heart, read this word. And I started in Genesis, and by the time I got to Matthew, I saw a God who loves me. I saw a God who came from outside of this time domain, stepped into this earth, and it wasn't for God so loved the world. It was for God so loved Ray Bolus that he gave his son. And I came and I received Jesus Christ. Then I truly went into riches. My rags to riches was a spiritual rags into a spiritual riches. And that's what he promises us when we read the book of Ephesians, all the promises of God and all the Swiss Alps of that book that he gives us. And here we come and we see this. So dispel the professional myth. Just tell people this is what God's done in my life. Do you need something like that? He'll do it in yours. So, by the way, just a note, because I think it's also one of Satan's greatest works. We're going to read about them again here shortly, Revelation 14, as we get there in a few. They sang, as it were, a new song before the throne, before the four living creatures and the elders, and no one could learn the song except the 144,000 who were redeemed from the earth. And here's what defines them. These are the ones who were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. They are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These were redeemed from among men, being first fruits to God and to the Lamb, first fruits of the sealing of the tribulation. And in their mouth was found no deceit, for they are without fault before the throne. I think one of the myths of today is the world wants to make the impurity Sodom and Gomorrah. It's the great cultural mantra that's continually on and on. These, it's not that they're virgins per se, it's that they did not defile. They didn't go and follow the way of the world of, it's okay, God understands. This is purity in its perfectness. And there's a lie of the devil that only this far side is the impurity. There is a purity that has a power behind it when we say, I'm not going to look at that. When you youth go, you know what, I know the world. I know that the world says, and many pastors will wink at it, God understands. There's a power in purity that you just say, you know what, Lord, though my flesh may long for this, I'm going to put myself into purity. You say, be holy, I'm going to be holy. I'm not going to look at this, nor am I going to engage in it physically in any way. But see, Satan wants to kind of bring it, if we can bring it over to this is the extreme of what's impurity, then I'll say over here is no longer the impurity. And it's a myth, and Satan just uses it so masterfully that we diminish what true purity is. True purity is all impurity that has been said, I will not. And so these purity pays. I'll probably give a special message on that when we get there in 14. But let's read on and see if we can figure out this. Who are these? I'm saying it sarcastically, by the way. Verse 5 through 8, of the tribe of Judah, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Reuben, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Gad, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Asher, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Naphtali, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Manasseh, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Simeon, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Levi, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Issachar, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Zebulun, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Joseph, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Benjamin, 12,000 were sealed. Sons of Jacob. Who do we think this passage is talking about? If any of us are confused, I'll save that. Because I could just go over and get one of the kids out of the children's church, bring them here, and go, who is this talking about? They go, of the 44,000 of the tribes of the children of Israel. It's talking about Israel, Pastor. They would not have any problem going, it's talking about Israel. Because it says they're talking about Israel. How in the world does it become that somehow today one of the devil's great workings and mysteries is that this is not Israel? It says Israel. How does it become we're the 144,000 chosen as we knock on your door? Now what do? Because they're up to 8 million. That's pretty fast growth, by the way. Jehovah's Witnesses, 1870-ish, starts as a small group. And believe they're the 144,000. Now they're up to 8 million. So they go, we are the 144,000. They thought the world would end when they reached 144,000. Then when the world didn't end, when they reached 144,000, then they had to, re-swing their doctrine. And so let me tell you why, to dispel myths. Satan, the world, the flesh, does not want this to be Israel. Because they could not accept that the Bible is infallible. And when Israel was dispersed, 70 AD, after Titus destroyed Israel and dispersed them to the four corners of the earth, they could not accept, they go, this can't be Israel then. Because there's no way that the nation of Israel can be birthed again, as we read in the book of Revelation. So therefore, we have to either say that the Bible is fallible, or we have to make some type of adjustment of how we can still say, no, the Bible is still true. And here's really what it means. And so what they do, it's called replacement theology. That Israel, spoken of here, is actually spiritualizing that it's the church. So when you read Israel through all of chapter 6 through 19, it's actually speaking of the church. Here's a problem with that is verse 1 of chapter 7, after these things, metatata. We keep talking about that. We talk about the divine outline. Chapter 1, revelation of Jesus Christ. Chapter 2 and 3, the church, the 7 churches. At chapter 4, verse 1 says, after these things, metatata. It's this continual. After this, God takes his church, takes them up in, and we're going to see why, again, we believe it's a pre-tribulation rapture of the church. The church isn't here. The problem with replacement theology is people want to put the church back into the tribulation because they can't believe it's Israel. And you know what else? One of the greatest haters of Israel is the church. And that's still today. But after the resurrection, it was the church. Read through our Protestant Reformation, it was the church. And you know why? Because they want to go that Israel's the Christ killer. Ray Bullis was the Christ killer. Rome wasn't the Christ killer. Israel wasn't the Christ killer. It was my sin that put him. It was our sin. We're the Christ killer. But the world spun it, you were the Christ killer. So then this hatred for Israel. The devil still stirs that and spins that. We talk about it in the prophecy update, so I'll spare myself to not go into the prophecy update and speak of this. But if the devil thinks that I can destroy Israel, then there's no revelation fulfillment. And Jesus can't come back to claim his earth because his prophecy has failed. That's part of the work that he's doing there and working on these things. But here's the promise of God. Romans 11, verse 26. And so is all, went to Bible college for 2 years, spent a lot of time and a lot of money. I want to share you my mastery of Greek. And the word there, and so all, you know what it means in Greek? Yeah. All. What did I do that for? I could have saved all that money. And so all of Israel will be saved. And as it's written, the deliverer will come out of Zion, and he will turn away ungodliness from Jacob, for this is my covenant with them when I take away their sin. All of Israel will be saved. And it's here that we're going to read and see that prophecy come to its fulfillment. All of Israel. God's not done with Israel. So replacement theology, it's errant because it's not what's being said. And these things that it's the church, it can't be. Here's what's important for you and I. And it's a joy. And that's why I find this passage so wonderful. People don't want to read the book of Revelation, but then they miss this greatest thing, and it applies to us today. If God bails on Israel, then God means God could bail on you. If God must be faithful to Israel, as he said, all of Israel will be saved, then God will be faithful. I sealed you, and no one can snatch you out of my hand. This verse, this chapter here, just holds on to this place. I promised that I would bring Israel back in the land. Ezekiel 36:37. 4 corners of the earth, and here Israel being regathered. Now, I'll say this, and I'm not speaking of thus says prophecy. Israel will not lose this war because they can't. Because God has brought them back into the fulfillment of Ezekiel 36 and 37, and he's going to keep bringing that fulfillment because that's what his word says. Doesn't mean that it won't be horrendous what's happening and going to happen as we watch this. Before I move on, may I just make this statement? Nobody knows. There's not one Jew, Israeli, who knows their lineage, what tribe they're from. Not one. Herod, history tells us, when he was told that the Messiah has come, he went and destroyed all the records of Israel and the Jewish people so no one could come and say, here's the lineage of Judah, and here's the right to this throne that this Messiah is going to come. He destroyed it all, and any shreds of it continually would be erased throughout the history of mankind. But here's the point that I make that speaks through the pages to us. God knows exactly who the 12,000 are. He knows exactly what tribe they are. Sometimes you'll hear the lost tribes of Israel. There is not one tribe of Israel that lost. God knows exactly every last one of the 12,000. He knows every last one of the tribe. And here's the thing. God knows every hair on your head. And if you think you feel lost, if you think God doesn't know your lineage, because there's people in your lineage is your parents' parents, your current situation in your family. Do you feel lost? God doesn't see you, and God says, just like Israel, I know every tribe. 2,000 years later, I know exactly what tribe they're from. And they are not lost in my eyes, and I know them, and I see them, and that's the promise that he speaks to every one of us here in this book right now, and I know where you're at. You are not lost, and you're not out of my sight, and I'm holding you, and I'm going to bring this deliverance.
You have made the way for us to know you, a path that's straight and right. By the light of the word.
You've been listening to a message from the book of Revelation on Light of the Word. Pastor Ray is covering many challenging topics and passages that are mentioned in Revelation, but following all the strange imagery and destructive events that occur in this book, there's a beautiful resolution to it all. There's a celebration, a wedding, a hope for a future without sin. Wouldn't that be such a relief? Revelation can be difficult to parse through, and understanding it all is impossible with our finite minds. But as the book plays out, and as God continues to reveal and show His will and way, you might be amazed at what He's doing and why. God is full of love for people and wants relationships with them. But if people willfully choose against Him, He's not going to force them into a relationship. He gives people free will. Our hope and prayer is that this book of the Bible is drawing you closer into relationship with God, and that you're able to appreciate His warnings, His grace, and His justice in conquering evil. To learn more about this ministry, go to lightoftheword.info. You'll also notice that Pastor Ray has written a devotional that is a companion resource to these teachings in the book of Revelation. It's free and available on our website. Thanks for listening to Light of the Word, illuminating the heart of God.